Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most and do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right, no extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
Welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Tom Zeeb. Tom, back in 2001, was broke as a joke. A near-death experience while whitewater rafting pushed him to find a new way to break free from his 9-to-5 job. His first deal almost took him under as well, but real estate investing saved him in the end, both personally and financially. Hundreds of deals later, he is happy to share the same negotiation, marketing, and business techniques that set him free so you can do the same. Simple, structured, and step-by-step techniques that will make you take you from spinning your wheels to doing profitable deals. So, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. I like to start with every guest, kind of where they grew up and what eventually led you to real estate. Sounds like there's some interesting things that happened before that with that near-death experience and all that. So,
yeah, there's crazy stuff along the way. I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
And went to college then in Cleveland, Ohio, and moved to Washington, D.C. for an internship and a job. And it was a few years into that job that I started going, man, this isn't what I thought I signed up for. I don't actually like this all that much. This isn't the lifestyle I want. I don't have the free time. I'm not making the money. And then, boy, it's not only am I not making the money, but I'm spending the money big time. Right. And I added up, Keith. I was $113,000 in the hole.
Wow.
So I was faced with that odd reality of how do you pay that off?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to get a $113,000 raise.
Yeah, exactly. So what were you able to do from there?
Oh, I totally ignored my problem and buried my head in the sand like a good ostrich does. And instead of doing anything about it, because I was just kind of in shock. I took a big old vacation to spend money. More money I didn't have. Took the 2 weeks off of work, went on a giant adventure trip with my buddies to India, and went whitewater rafting on the Ganges River.
Really? Oh, that sounds amazing.
It was. Yeah. It was amazing. Except there was a point where I couldn't quite stay on the raft. We went through a giant Class 5 rapid. There'd been a lot of rain that season. That part was rough, and I went flying off the edge of the boat. Everyone else stayed on, of course, so I got made fun of nonstop. But I went off the edge of the boat underwater, and I'm bouncing around on rocks and tumbling upside down. You have no way, which way's up, which way's down. You just assume you're going forward because of the current. But what if I face plant on a rock? Or what if I get stuck on a rock? Or what if I run out of air? It wasn't like I had a great chance to breathe.
Yeah.
But instead of being afraid, I got very angry. I was just flat out mad at myself. Like, boy, what have I done? I went to college, got a degree in history. Well, that was working out well. Dug myself into a massive hole, financial hole that I had no way of getting out of. And my big thing was to escape. So I said, man, if I get out of this, I swear things are going to be different.
Yeah.
And so obviously I got out of it. I got home and absolutely nothing was different. I was still drowning. I was drowning in debt. I was drowning with no more vacation time. I was still drowning in a job, drowning in the commute. And everything had gone from bad to worse.
So what type of work at that time were you doing? You said your degree was in history, but what type of work were you doing?
It was Washington, D.C., so things get very political. It was a cross between politics and IT. We used to design software for lobbyists or for government affairs divisions of corporations.
Okay. Interesting.
It was interesting. It just, like anything else, I wanted to be on my own. I think I was experiencing being a budding entrepreneur and having the entrepreneurial spirit, but no one had ever quite nurtured that right or managed to make me think that was an acceptable way forward.
Right. And let's maybe go back to you being in the river there. And I've been whitewater rafting, and I know it can be challenging. Most of the time, I was able to stay in the boat, but we had a few folks that weren't. And it really depends on, you mentioned a class 5 rapid, which is totally different than just your regular, whitewater rafting. How did you eventually get out of that situation?
Yeah. Well, once I was back home, a friend of mine out of the blue handed me a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. Probably a book most of your listeners have read because it seems to be really big in the entrepreneurial spaces. And I read that book, and then I sat down and read it again, and I was amazed that this spoke to me in a totally different way that I had never been spoken to before. In fact, it gave me a way out. That same frustration I had when I was drowning was now answered. And Rich Dad said, well, you just got to buy real estate, buy cash flowing rental properties. That's the ticket to everything.
Right.
So not having a clue what I was doing, owning nothing of my own. I mean, I was still renting. I was living in an apartment. I was a renter.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. And I went out and bought a 6-unit building in New York City because, what could possibly go wrong? And landlord friendly New York City.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And what did go wrong?
Everything. Pretty much everything that you could think about, including I had 6 tenants, 6 very professional tenants, so to speak, that knew exactly how to game the system, play the system. They weren't paying a dime in rent. So now I made my bad financial situation worse because now I had to, try to make ends meet on this mortgage. And I had 6 tenants stealing from me by not paying a penny in rent. That didn't go well. It was a harsh winter at that time as well. No pun intended. Harsh winter, and this place had heating oil, and so it was sucking through heating oil like it was going out of style. And this was a deal I was doing with my sister because I handed her the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. She went, "Oh wow, this could be our way out." So the two of us went and bought this. And remember, this is 2001, so they were giving mortgages to every clown that couldn't afford them. And that included me. That was, people were like, well, if you were so broke, how'd you get a mortgage? Why do you think the meltdown happened? They were giving mortgages to totally unqualified people like me. The last time either one of us went to see the property, it was my sister Tracy. And one of the tenants got a little bit mouthy with her, said, "Hey, I'm sick and tired of you coming around here all the time asking for money," which is, I guess it was just, when we thought it was collecting rent. This tenant then reached out, grabbed my sister's head, and smacked it into the wall.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
And I said, we're done. Let's just walk away. This isn't worth it. Clearly, we screwed something up. Something ain't right. Let's kind of back to the drawing board and let's just walk away from this thing. And then we started getting down into the weeds of real estate. What would it really take to do this right? How are we going to, we got to figure this out a little bit more than just, hey, go buy a rental property. We needed a little more rubber meets the road knowledge.
Yeah. So what did you do with that 6 unit? Did you just walk away, or what, were you able to turn it around?
No, we didn't turn it around. We eventually lost it on a short sale, but it was fascinating to me, Keith. And it's something that I always remember now. And I always preach this to my students now. I said, I was a motivated seller. I was in severe trouble. I was desperate to get rid of this property. And I called every ad in the newspaper, every bandit sign, every flyer, it was the early days of the internet, but I called every internet ad I could find. And guess how many investors answered the phone?
Not many.
None at all.
Really?
Zero. It's a bizarre thing. And nobody, and also zero people called me back. And I'm quite sure I was leaving a desperate sounding message because I was legitimately desperate. So I'm a classic motivated seller, the kind of person that I build my business on now. The kind of person I'm out to help. I was one of those people, and there was nobody there to help me. Why on earth were these investors spending money on letters and postcards and signs and ads when they weren't answering the phone or returning a call? I was shocked by that. But now I realize this because a lot of people think they're doing real estate, but they're not actually doing real estate. So I always tell my students, don't worry about your competition. It ain't doing much.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And honestly, I see that across the board, not just in real estate, but whether it be an electrician, whether it be a tradesman, where they don't return your call. They're just communication skills are terrible, and just answering your phone and being available when the customer's there and answering their questions and returning those voicemails. That alone puts you ahead of most of your competition. I don't care what it is,
Everything. It's amazing. And it's almost like these past few years, professionalism has totally disappeared. Incompetency seems to be off the charts, and it's gotten worse. Like, it's harder and harder to find good people. And it's harder and harder to find anyone that'll answer the phone, much less return a phone call.
Yeah, exactly. So you and your sister kind of went back to the drawing board. Tell us, from there, what did you do in order to kind of find your way with real estate? Because obviously, if you're coaching other people, you found out how to do it. So
yeah, I figured it out eventually. But it took more than just the book. What happened was I found my local real estate investors association, and I walked in and I was amazed. I'm like, well, there's a room full of people that rehab houses, that landlord houses, that wholesale houses. Well, I had no idea what that meant, or who those weirdos were, wholesalers. But I went, wow, this is actually real. This isn't just book knowledge, and this isn't just stuff from old books or late night TV. This is actually happening. And so I paid real close attention, started going to their different training classes and attending their Saturday seminars and getting an idea of what was out there for me. And then my first successful deal happened. I wound up, pretty much by accident, wholesaling a property that I had put under contract that I was planning on rehabbing. But then luckily a guy offered to just take it off my hands and buy it from me wholesale, which I barely understood what that meant. But in a nutshell, what it meant and what he said to me was, look, I want to buy that deal from you right now, exactly as it is. Just assign your contract to me. I'll take over. I'll go to settlement and you'll get paid. And my only thought was, you can do that legally? Really?
Right.
All right. He's like, kid, it ain't that hard. I'll walk you through the process. And next thing you know, I got a check for $22,819.66. So I was just shy of 23 grand from doing what? I marketed to find the deal. I negotiated it, but I didn't have to deal with any tenants. Nobody was beating up my sister. I didn't have to deal with any crews or rehab, or I'm not good at any of that stuff anyway. And so I got to do the part that I liked: market to find it, negotiate to put the deal together, and then I sold it to somebody else that wanted to do all that work. Which these RIA groups are full of those people. Yeah. They're full of rehabbers and full of landlords. And I realized this is my niche. This is what I want to be doing. And if I just focus on this, I'll turn everything around. And that's what I did.
Yeah, no, that's a great advice there. I too have, gone to the RIA meetings, and it really opened my eyes. As you mentioned, they have workshops, they have different things, and they're always covering different subjects. And so for somebody who's, knows they want to get into real estate investing, but doesn't know exactly what, avenue of real estate investing they want to get in, this is a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, because some things you're going to look at and go, wow, that's me. I want that. Other things you go, huh? I don't really get it. Well, that's not me. Great. Well, now you know what not to do. So you can learn what to do and what not to do. It doesn't take very long to kind of really get narrow focused on what you personally ought to be doing based on you and your personality, your needs, your family, your financial situation. You can customize a plan for yourself pretty darn quick.
And so you did that initial one and got that almost $23,000. How did you from there start kind of gearing up your marketing, where you were finding other deals, and tell us a little bit about how, you worked through that part of the wholesaling.
Yeah. I started to realize, I said, all right, wait a minute. I decided to focus on rundown, dilapidated houses that needed to be repaired because I noticed that those were the big wholesale fees were going to be. There were a lot of rehabbers that get really busy rehabbing. So they stopped marketing. So they had a very stop and start business. I thought if I could just sell to them and serve them a deal on a silver platter, they always seem happy to pay for it. And they are. So I just focused on my marketing and my negotiation. My second deal, it only paid out $5,000. But so what? $5,000 is $5,000 more than zero. And then it just kept going from there. So, and you went, I said, as long as I focus on consistency in my marketing, I'll keep bringing in the leads and I can convert those into deals when I get better and better at negotiation, which took some time, some thought, some training. But then I'm able to move more and more, more people say yes to you and more people say yes to you at better numbers. That's what happens when you get good at negotiation.
Yeah, makes sense. And you said you focused on kind of, houses that needed quite a bit of work or were somewhat dilapidated. How did you find those to be able to market to them?
Yeah, a bunch of different ways. I mean, you can visibly see them when you're driving around. I mean, go out and start driving in the neighborhood and watch what happens. You'll see something that makes sense. But if you're not driving around looking at absolutely everything, you can find it from looking for people that have problems. So, people get old. That should be no surprise to anyone. People get old and they let their houses get run down. It's a natural thing to happen. Time, weather, all that wears away at a property. And so eventually there's a value play there for us. People get into other situations. Their tenants tear the place up. They get their sisters' heads going in the walls. Now that wall needs to be fixed, that kind of thing. People get divorced. People get a new job and have to leave town. People get a new job and have to move into town. They move in, they move out. They start having kids. They need more space. Their kids get old and leave the house. Now they need less space. There's all these different reasons that people get into trouble and need to sell a property even more than they want to sell it sometimes. Pre-foreclosure is another one of those. So when you start focusing on people with problems, you find the properties that are in need of some TLC as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's neat. So what with those, did you typically reach out to them by phone? Did you typically send them a postcard or a letter or a combination of all of those? What was your strategy?
Combination. I'm a big direct mail guy. So I love letters and postcards. I always start with that. Then if I have a phone number, I'll follow up with a phone call. But the mail is relentless. The mail just keeps coming, depending how often, it might be quarterly, it might be monthly. I tweak my repetition cycle to the urgency of the situation. But they're always out there. And the cool thing is most of these lists are publicly available because when people get into trouble, there's usually a legal filing having to do with that. I mean, think about it, divorce is a legal proceeding. Probate from someone passing away is a legal proceeding. Kicking a tenant out is a legal proceeding in eviction court. So there's all this stuff that's a matter of public record. I mean, even being an absentee owner, owning a property but not living in it, or owning a property and not living in it and happening to be out of state absentee owners. All of this stuff is a matter of public record. So I research that and send them letters and postcards.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so tell me a little bit about how your business grew from that first deal. You started to see, you mentioned the second one being a $5,000 deal, but you kept going. And how many deals would you say you're doing per year fast forwarding to maybe today?
Sure. Fast forwarding, I do 12 to 15 a year.
Okay.
Which some people go, wow, that's it? Yeah, this is a lifestyle business. I get people that tell me they want to do 100 deals a month. I'm going, oh, wow, why? Right. Are you looking for a job? Because I'm not. Right. Would you? So yeah, which averages about one a month, one and a third a month, depending how it works out. They never close. Some months you close 0, other months you close 4. So just on average, when I look at a year, I've aimed to do about 12 to 15 different deals through the course of that year.
Okay. And as far as price range, are they going to vary all over the map, or is there a specific price range that you target?
Well, it varies where you are in the country. So my Washington, D.C. area stuff is that's a pricey East Coast city. But within there, there's, the Virginia side is moderately high. The city used to be very high, parts of it. And then the Maryland side, a little more quote unquote affordable, slightly lower prices. But you go to other places, it's all over the map. I go to Baltimore, it's much lower prices. So I tell people, don't worry about the price of the property. There's buyers in your area that are used to whatever the numbers are. If that's small numbers, medium numbers, big numbers, it doesn't matter. What you're after is being able to negotiate with a seller down to a price that works, meaning the rehabber wants it or the landlord wants it, and you can get the seller down to slightly better than that. That way you have a spread, and that spreads your wholesale fee.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure you work with, have a buyer's list as well, or people that are actively flipping homes or whatever it may be, that you can kind of push those out to once you get them under contract. But tell us a little bit about that process itself. And I know that really kind of can vary from state to state. I know, I'm in Texas and I'm familiar with, just assigning the contract here and not necessarily having to do a double close. But what do you typically do?
I like a contract assignment. I think it's the cleanest, easiest, simplest way. I don't know, a bunch of people do double closing, some other complicated things, and they're running up their costs. I would argue pointlessly, running up their costs, subjecting themselves to a really nasty form of tax, short-term capital gains tax. So they're blowing a third of their deal, and they're usually doing it because they're trying to hide what they make. I have no issues with that. Part of your negotiation process is building rapport with the seller. They know they called somebody in business. They didn't call a charity. So it's okay to make some money. Right. And I don't have any need to hide it. So I argue that point with people constantly. Yeah. Just assign it, and it's so much simpler.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. And then, so what are some of the things that you feel like are important, that maybe newer investors aren't doing correctly, that you kind of can help and coach people along with?
There's usually two things. First off, consistency in marketing. Yeah. It's usually non-existent. Most people are horrendously inconsistent. That's the only consistent thing, is that they're inconsistent in their consistency. So it's a low score all around for people. So you really want to get in the business and get your business start to flow. Get some consistency to what you're doing, consistency to your marketing. That's going to bring a lead flow in. And the more lead flow you have, the more deal flow you have, the more deal flow you have, the more cash flow you have. That's part number one. Part number two, for the leads you do get, you've got to study negotiation. It's, a lot of people kind of are, I'm a good negotiator. Based on what? They say, because it's this, manly thing. I'm a good negotiator. No, there's an art and a science to it. And that's good news, because you could just learn the science and simply spit out the techniques and be a much better negotiator. And then the art will come with time as you practice, and you just get, the stuff becomes internal to you, and you start spitting out negotiation game nonstop, and you'll get more deals. So you're going to get more people saying yes to you at better prices because you're working the price down.
Yeah. Okay. And when it comes to the marketing and being consistent with it, what type of monthly budget do you need in order to, obviously there's some that you can ramp up to, an astronomical number, but in order to do, 12 to 15 deals a year, what does that look like from a direct mail cost?
Yeah, it's a combination for people. I like to see, I tell my students, look, figure a baseline of $300 to $500 a month on the low end.
Okay.
If you're tight on money, $300 to $500 a month. A lot of that's going to get burned up in postage and direct mail campaigns.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have a lot of money, usually people are, they're money rich or money poor, and they're time rich or time poor, and they're usually inverse. There's, inversely proportional. So if you've got more money than time, well, then spend the money on things that don't take that much time. If, on the other hand, you don't have a lot of money, well, then do the things that take more time in marketing. And there's a whole bunch of different techniques you can be doing on either side. I go through 85 different things with people. Going, you don't need to be doing 85. but choose the ones that fit you and fit your budget, being that a time budget or a money budget.
Yeah. Okay. And so what are some of the other things they can do besides the like direct mail? What other methods if you don't quite have the money but you've got the time?
Yeah. My favorite right now that my students are crushing with is driving for deals. So going around looking for properties, but adding a technological spin to it. We use a software app called Deal Machine that is just, it makes it fun. It makes the tracking easy. It takes this whole list of things we used to wind up having to do. After you go driving for deals, you came home with this giant list of things to do. Now that list is done as you're driving around, all in the app. So that's been fabulous for us.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great. Yeah, anything like that you can do. So driving around for the dollars, and then as far as approaching the seller, are you ever knocking on doors, or is it all usually a phone call, or what is typical?
Sometimes door knocking is very powerful. It can be a little time consuming, but it's very powerful. I like to try to get them on the phone first. I like them to respond to me from my direct mail or my other types of ads, or answer the phone and get into a conversation, because I want to make sure it's at least ballpark range of being a deal before I'm going to invest the time to go out there.
Yeah, makes sense, because they're not all gonna fit that. Let's maybe talk a little bit about that. So if you have a property that is going to be turned around, what are you trying to create the delta or the spread between what you offer versus what flipper or somebody else will purchase it?
Yeah, good question. First, I have to understand how my flippers are thinking. So as I build my buyers list, I ask them, hey, how do you look at a deal? How do you analyze? What's a good deal for you? Let me know so I can serve it to you at those numbers. And what I found very amusing is it all basically comes down to the 70% rule, which is, so 70% of the after repair cost minus the repair cost itself. Sorry, 70% of the after repair value based on comps minus the repair cost itself. That's what they want to buy at. And they'll buy at that number all day long. And I have people say, oh, Tom, that's so basic. The 70% rule is nonsense. But you know what? I've seen people do all this sophisticated math to basically work it out to the 70% rule. Now, sometimes 70 goes up to 75, sometimes it goes down to 65 or somewhere in between. That's fine. When you're putting buyers on your buyers list, ask them how they're looking at it. And then that's the number you're going to use. So whatever, if it's the 68% rule or the 72% rule, that's fine. But that's what you're following at. So if I know it's going to sell at that price, then my target in the negotiation is to get the motivated seller to agree to sell it to me for less than that price. And how much less is my wholesale fee? Be that $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, or my highest wholesale fee has been $65,188.
Right.
So the way I figure out my fee is how good of a job can I do negotiating?
Yeah. Makes sense. And tell me a little bit maybe about the condition on these homes. You mentioned deferred maintenance, that kind of thing, but are there any other instances where there's an issue with, basically how the house is, whether it be filled with junk, whether it be, the yard just completely out of order, or what are some of the scenarios that you see?
Yeah. D, all of the above. I love any of those situations, right? All of those can be signaling it's a potential deal. So junk in the house, absolutely love it. Hoarders, people who can't control themselves and just absolutely pack every room full of junk, I love them. They've made a mess of the house. They psychologically can't stop doing it, yet they usually recognize they have an issue and they're so relieved to just be able to walk away.
Yeah.
Then they can go it over somewhere else. And I tell them, you don't have to clean a thing out, because that would be the worst thing for them, is having to clean it out. So no. I'll take it exactly as it is. And there's a relief there. They know they can move on. So I'm always looking for some sort of value play. It might be run down. It might be out of date. It might actually only be 10, 15 years old, but you'd be surprised how fast things go out of style.
Yeah. And maybe on as far as the direct mail goes, tell me a little bit about like the response rate. What do you see, or what are you aiming for when it comes to kind of the response rate that you're getting?
Oh, this is the part that shocks most people, Keith. Because everyone thinks it's going to be everyone that calls them, everyone that's on my list is going to get,
Right.
barely anyone's going to do anything.
Right.
Expect a 1% response rate on a good day.
Okay. Yeah.
That means 99 people threw out your letter or your postcard. They looked at it and chucked it in the trash. So you have to get used to that. This is a game about rejection. It's purely a numbers game. We want to work on that 1%. Now, certain lists I have a higher percentage. If the more time you spend researching on the marketing, usually the better response rate you'll get. It just tends to be a much smaller list. But my lists that are bigger, like let's say out-of-state absentee owners, lucky if it's 1%. And that's a pretty common number across all different forms of marketing, not just in real estate. 1% response.
Yeah, for sure. What is there a certain lead source though that you see better than the 1% on typically, or?
Yeah, my probates push up in response, but it's a much smaller list. Probates are someone passed away and there's an inherited property.
Yeah.
I get a higher response rate. It's just a much smaller list.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw that as well. My wife and I were doing some wholesaling. Actually, the house I'm in right now, we knocked on the door, but it was a pre-foreclosure. And so, she would make the list while I was out of town for work. But when I'd come home on the weekends, that's what we would do. And it paid off on this one. But probates was one that, seemed to get the highest response rate between the two. And oftentimes that one, at least my experience with it, it didn't seem like there was many people in the deal that, if there was one that was a house that was just run down or maybe a tax lien or whatever it may be, it seemed like there was, quite a few folks going after the same one.
My guess behind the reason for that would be it took an ounce of effort to figure out the probate. There was some uncomfortable research. There was some to go to the courthouse and deal with the pain in the butt employees there. And then I had to actually dig through and spend a couple hours doing it. Well, that ounce of effort that you put in to do it, that wiped out 98% of your competition right there. Nobody does anything consistently. Most people, they'll do it once and then I didn't enjoy that. They don't go back. Well, goodness me, there's gold in there. So yeah, put in a little time and effort and dig for it. You'll find it.
Yeah. What about, do you use any thing as far as a CRM or anything that you use to try to help organize the process along the way?
The only formal software I use is Deal Machine. And again, that's on the marketing side. Everything else, I don't particularly like using other people's ideas of how I ought to be doing my work. So I just use the Microsoft suite of products. I use Outlook for email, calendar, reminders that syncs with my phone. And then everything else is just a word processor and a spreadsheet with reminders on my calendar to do things. I'm delightfully old school that way.
Yeah. No, that's great. What are some maybe some other things that the audience should know about wholesaling that maybe we haven't covered yet?
Let's see. Okay. Wholesaling. It's an exit strategy. Okay. That's it. It's an exit strategy. It's not really any different than rehabbing. It's not really any different than landlording. It's not really any different than any of the commercial ones. It's an exit strategy. When I say it's no different, obviously the exit is different. What's the same is the entrance. No matter what kind of deal you're doing, if you're going to rehab it yourself or landlord it yourself or wholesale it, you need to market to find the deal. Then you need to negotiate to make it into a deal. Then you got to put it under contract, control it all the way through till settlement. Then you get to either wholesale it or rehab it or landlord it. So this odd obsession people have saying, well, I don't want to learn wholesaling because I want to be a rehabber. It's the same thing, kids. It's the same thing at the beginning. Right. The only thing that changes is the exit side of it. The entrance is the same. The inbound is the same. Find it, make it, get paid.
Yeah, makes sense. Interesting. And then what? So beyond the wholesaling, is that all you focus on, or do you do any of the rehab or flipping or anything else?
I do a little bit of rehabbing. Every now and then, you get a stellar deal, and you go, "Oh man, that's not too bad of a famous last words. That's not too bad of a rehab."
Right.
Oh, I guess I'll go for the big bucks and do that one. And Keith, I guess I would put it this way: I love having rehab. I love looking back on that project and looking how beautiful it turned out, looking at my before and after photos and being so happy and proud of what I did. But I hate rehabbing.
Yeah.
I hate it in the moment. I get so sick and tired of it. I got a construction project starting tomorrow, and it's just I'm happy right now. In a week, I'm going to be dreading the whole darn thing. It's just the way it goes. It's fine. That's me. That's my personality. Other people love all of that. Well, great. Find what fits you. I know that I'm going to get a little bit tired of picking out colors and picking out tile and dealing with today's whatever problem happened to rear its ugly head this fine morning. So there's all those kinds of things where I go, I would rather just wholesale it and move on. But again, that's my personality. That's not necessarily everyone else's.
Right, right. So if somebody was going to work with you, number one, how are they finding out about you? Obviously, podcasts, that kind of thing. But how are they finding out the ability to work with you? And then are you focused mainly in your geographic area, or are you working with people all over when it comes to wholesale?
All over. I've got students nationwide because the fundamentals of what I'm teaching, marketing and negotiation, work absolutely everywhere. So you can't escape the need for marketing. You can't escape the need for negotiation. So it's very much a nationwide thing. And what I would encourage people to do is, before you jump straight into a program or think you need training, but just get your feet wet and see what you think of some different things. My podcast is a great spot to start. It's called The Art and Science of Real Estate Negotiation. And I've also got some marketing bonuses I think you'd enjoy as well. So if you went to tomzeeb.com, that's TOM, Z as in zebra, EEB as in boy.com, and then put a // and write the word trifecta, you'll get training on my 3 favorite negotiation strategies. And if you put tomzeeb.com / deal flow, you'll get a marketing training. So start there, see how you respond to the marketing, see what you think of negotiation. And then if that's something you like, we could always talk more.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe talk a little bit about that negotiation. What are some of the things that you feel like work the best when it comes to negotiating with a potential seller?
Well, first off is recognizing that there's always a little bit more cushion than you think in someone else's number. But the only way you're going to get there is to ask and to use techniques. And some people start to feel uncomfortable when you say use negotiation techniques. Isn't that high pressure sales? Isn't that kind of unscrupulous or unfair? And my answer is no. One, it's not high pressure sales. You're going to ask simple questions or handle yourself in a certain manner that is not unscrupulous at all. You're trying to get down to the lowest number that they're willing to take. You're not forcing them to take a lower number. You want to see, you keep testing them to see how firm is their number. And when you get them down to their bottom, you'll know you're at the bottom and there's no more to go, which is comforting because all right, fine. Now, does that number work for you or not? Is that something that you're happy with or not? Because maybe it's not a deal. Not everything turns into a deal. So I'm constantly using my techniques to get the price down and get them to say yes to me.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. So from there, when you're going to visit a property, you're going to go out, you're going to meet with the seller. Are you trying to identify I know one of the things that we used to try to do is just, I see what their problem is. Obviously they need to get rid of the property, but sometimes there's other things as well that you can help them with. I give an example on this particular house. They had nowhere to go. Coming out of this. And so I helped to kind of pad their living expenses for 1 year, to kind of get them off and get them going. And it still ended up working out really well for us. But just curious if there's anything that you've done like that to try to identify what's the best approach to be able to help this person.
Yeah, constantly. That's the whole key to getting them to say yes to you is there's effectively 3 phases to the negotiation. You're going to start by pinpointing their problem. So you're asking them questions about the problem, and they're opening up to you and building rapport as they open up, as they reveal what their problems are. Well, not only they've told you what their problems are, like, well, we don't have anywhere to go, or we need somewhere to live, or what would we do? Well, they've told you what this problem is, and you're not just the real estate investor, you're a problem solver. You have to be, right? Mm-hmm. We've got to solve that motivated seller's problem. That's their number one thing. It's not price. They want their problem solved. If they're just after price, well, then there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser because you need price too. You're an investor.
Yeah.
But if you can solve their problem and make them win and you can get your price and you win, then we truly have a win-win. So it always starts off by pinpointing what their problem is, because then we could package up a solution that would work for them. We could develop a solution that solves their problems. And they go, oh yeah, wait a minute, that would give me something to live, or that would give me enough money to make it, or that way. So you're putting that together. And then the third phase is you're persuading them to say yes to you, because you've pinpointed the problem, you've packaged up a solution that would work for them. They don't automatically say yes. You've got to persuade them to say yes, show them why it works for them, get them to kind of almost go into the future. Future pace them is the technical term. You want future pace them so they can almost taste what that future is like once their problem is solved and once they don't have this house to deal with anymore and they don't have any of the headaches. And then you bring them back to today, kind of snap them back to today, and they're back in the pain. Oh, I still got to deal with this. But now suddenly they see there's a way out, and you were the one that presented them with the way out, which means that you have the answer. And so now they want to go with you.
Yeah. That's great. Anything else that you feel like the audience should know about the wholesaling process, or maybe something that we didn't cover?
Discipline and focus. That's the main thing. I said that in terms of consistency. If you're struggling to get started, assuming you know what you ought to be doing, you need to get out there and do it consistently and implement it. If you've been in the business for a little bit, but you're unhappy with the way things have turned out, you probably made a wrong turn somewhere. Or maybe you're doing something because you think you have to, but it's destroying your lifestyle. I would argue you need to go back and kind of retool and re-engineer what your business so that you're actually happy with it. Because if you're miserable, what's the point of being an entrepreneur? I want you to be set free by entrepreneurship. That's the point, and enjoying it, not feeling trapped by it.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned systems and having a system. I oftentimes, I'm a sales guy, and that's a big thing that I have found, not only for myself, but also for many of my sales folks, is that they've got to come in each day with a goal and need to hit a certain number. And, it's about really coming in and doing that on a consistent basis. And if you do that, the results will happen. It's time tested. It's just a matter of, making sure, am I doing enough activity? And then, when it comes time to actually close the deal or present the solution, being able to kind of know the best methods to be able to do that with people trying to sell their place. So,
Keith, that's the crazy thing. I mean, what you just said is the key.
Right.
And yet, let's be quite honest, it doesn't sound terribly glamorous. It doesn't sound like some exciting secret. And then we went, but that's it, gang. It's not rocket science. It's a numbers game. It's not some special skill or ninja tactic or secret. It's exactly what you said. Step forward, start implementing, and actually do your work. I'm shocked how dedicated people will get to a TV show, but not to their own business and their own marketing. I'm shocked how dedicated people will get to a job and going through a grind every day, 5-6 days a week, 8+ hours a day, and yet they won't do that for themselves. So I don't understand. I mean, if you're doing consistency on these other things, why not put some consistency into yourself and watch what happens?
Yeah. That's a great point. What, when you're not wholesaling properties and coaching folks, Tom, tell me a little bit about what you like to do when you're not working.
Yeah, I guess I'm hobby obsessed in a way. I like being with my wife and kids and traveling. We come up with all sorts of different crazy travel adventures, which is, I also love travel adventures with my friends. We'll go scuba diving or climb a mountain, or long backpacking hikes in the mountains. So just generally adventure, it helps me reset and gets me re-energized and gives me that constant desire to do more deals, make more money, so I can go on more great adventures. It's fun that way. And I also like to read and jet ski a lot. Now that I've moved to Florida.
Is that where you are now, Florida?
Sarasota, Florida. Moved down a few years ago and love it.
Perfect. Yeah. That's kind of on my radar for a place when it comes time to retire. Florida Keys specifically is what I like, but
gotcha.
But anyway, well, and that's awesome. As far as I love the hiking, love the adventures and everything as well. What about? I've got two two additional questions for you, Tom, but maybe before I go there, if you could just kind of remind everybody how they can find out more about you.
Sure. TomZeeb.com. Again, it's TOMZ as in zebra, EEB as in boy.com. That's my podcast website. There's also a lot of training videos and other things on the real estate training side at TractionRealEstateMentors.com. TractionRealEstateMentors.com.
Okay, perfect. All right. So one of the questions I ask everybody is for somebody who's just starting out in their investment journey. What advice would you give them, Tom?
It's absolutely possible. Don't let anyone tell you it's not, because you're going to hear a lot of negative people. They're going to come up against. They're going to think you're nuts. They're going to think you're crazy. I know plenty of people thought I was nuts and crazy. And those same people, fast forward 20-something years, wind up with a little bit of jealousy because, like, oh, wow, must be nice to be able to travel like that. Must be nice to do it. Well, yeah, it is. Because, remember when I was struggling and you thought I was crazy? That's what it took. So you're going to put up with a lot of that, and you just need to literally put up with it. You kind of just box it out, move it aside. People are usually saying it because they love you, they care about you. So let them say it, but don't pay any attention to it. Get out there and you focus on what you know you need to do, and that's actually implementing what you're learning. Don't get stuck in a forever learning trap. Make sure you're actually implementing what you're learning. That way you can start to get results.
Yeah, that's great advice too. Okay. And then you mentioned you like to read, and I always like to ask, not just for my audience, but for myself as well. But a good book recommendation. It doesn't have to be necessarily real estate, but it certainly can be.
Yeah. I'll give one real estate, one not real estate.
Sounds good.
Real estate wise, there's a book it's called To Be or Not to Be Intimidated. It's by Robert Ringer, who was a commercial broker years ago. I absolutely love his book. And when I think back, when I initially read that 20 plus years ago, it really struck a chord in me, and it stayed with me. It's all about life in the business jungle and kind of looking out for yourself, and a whole bunch of themes that I think have gotten even more valuable in today's world and today's life, although so which means he was way ahead of the curve in getting those out there. So that's an excellent read that I think you'll enjoy.
Okay.
On the real estate side. Non-real estate side, I'm a giant Winston Churchill fan. Okay. And he's written probably more words than you could possibly read in a lifetime, because he was just prolific writer. But particularly his history of the Second World War. Now that's not light reading. That's 6 volumes. It's giant. But pick up something by Winston Churchill and read. Watch for the leadership lessons. Watch for what are effectively business lessons, even though he wasn't talking about it from a business perspective. Having to deal with everything all at once, having to keep a whole bunch of balls up in the air and moving. That's important to an entrepreneur, because we wear all the different hats. And so I've learned a lot about entrepreneurship from a fellow who wasn't even necessarily an entrepreneur, but a really incredible human being.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly a lot of leadership lessons from Winston Churchill. Absolutely. All right. Well, I've enjoyed our time together, Tom, and I know you've added a ton of value for our listeners. And I'm sure that there will be people reaching out to you. And yes, it's one other avenue, right, to be able to get into the real estate game. And one of the easier avenues from a barrier of entry standpoint. Not easy. You still have to be consistent. You still have to have those systems in place, but it's there for you. So thank you, Tom. Appreciate you being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Keith.
All right. Thank you.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.